Catus, Maximus here, this time with a review of Koken Japan's premium Japan hand tool manufacturer. They're universal joints. These are promo items. I always like to say that at the beginning. I have actually very rarely taken any promo items, but sometimes I do when the manufacturers is willing to send them to me essentially at their own risk. No conditions or anything like that. And I've done a few reviews or a video recently about cruddy manufacturers, and Koken and I have kind of randomly emailed a few times back and forth. There's actually a subscriber who really likes Koken tools and actually kind of emailed Koken without me asking, telling them about me. And I do have my email address public on my YouTube About page. But surprisingly enough, Koken did contact me. This is easily the most professional grade tool manufacturer that has, and you know, I've been pretty reluctant because I don't like anytime you get promotional products and do a video, don't get that great of comments. And their unique thing was these double universal joints, both in impact and non-impact. And so they said, you know, if there's something else I might be interested in. So I said, might as well do one of the standard pin drive impact. This happens to be an inch drive. And so that's what I said. I said, sure, but, you know, for me, when I get promo tools especially, I will always say no unless the company has a product that I'm personally interested in that I don't own. And I don't own any inch drive universals. And so that was the big impetus. They want $156 just for this universal, this inch drive, and they sent along with the rest of these. Surprisingly enough, the double impact universal is pretty expensive, $95, but these other ones are actually reasonably priced. It's like, you know, $35-40 for the quarter inch and like $45 for the 3/8. And I think these are actually pretty cool and well reasonably priced. It's actually the double universal impacts that are almost seem to be proportionally the most expensive, because even though $155 is quite a bit of money, for an inch drive universal, it's more than reasonable when you start considering that Snap-on wants $250, SK wants $200. You can't find Protos and Williams for the $100 to $120 range, but I do believe that for $155, the Koken is well reasonably priced. It is a pretty well made with really good quality control, and at least that's one thing to say about Koken is their quality control is very high. They can be a bit tough on their warranties. They really don't, from what I've read online, they really don't like replacing tools that have been abused. And if Koken actually or any of their marketing people or whatever end up watching this video, my recommendation is try to be as generous as possible, especially, you know, in any market, but particularly in the North American market. People will really like to count on our tools. A lot of people buy them because they're lifetime purchases. And maybe warranting out a few tools that maybe were abused is a short-term loss that is more than made up for by having a loyal customer who ends up buying thousands of dollars of tools over the long term, over the years. So that'd be the other comment to Koken. Otherwise, pretty nice. They do have just excellent quality control. You can't really find any flaws. All the measurements, such as the drive pinholes, are always really good. The ball detail, especially an inch drive, the measurements where the holes are always really consistent among inch drive tools. And Koken is no different. This fits totally tight, but without falling out. When we put it, we just slap that in there. The pin just goes through. And this has been on every socket I've tested this on. Really pretty nice and actually reasonably priced for an inch drive. They do use press fit collar, but they do something else, as you can see. They go around, they stake the collar in addition to it being press fit. So definitely pretty happy with that. The other things I can mention is that these are hex drive on the non-impacts. Actually, I should continue with the impact. One thing I'll say about the double universal impact is what they've done is I've got like a Craftsman USA and a Powerbuilt. It's a Japanese tool company, so, you know, a lot of Japanese equipment and particularly vehicles have very tight spaces, and so what they've opted for is a much smaller diameter with something that maybe has a bit small. It does have a smaller pin. Koken does cold forge their tools, so they're very strong. Cold forging just adds a degree of controlled work hardening. But nonetheless, like compared to this old Craftsman USA, we can see that the pin in this Coke, and these are both 1/2 inch, is substantially smaller. But once again, you get less diameter and higher access. So I think it's just a fine trade-off. The other deal with doing that is this is quite a bit shorter than just snapping 2 universals together. Of course, it's spring-loaded, runs real smoothly. Really do like it. They even have a nice touch where they do this extra cut. Many, like in 1/2 inch drive, they use detent pins instead of balls, and you have to press them in to insert the drive or to insert the extension. So they do that as extra clearance so that that pin can ride down just like a ball detent. So all you have to do is deal with releasing it. And it is pretty good. Here's a gray. This isn't the only double universal. I've had these grays for a while. These are double universal spark plug sockets. Real handy on things like Subarus. But you can see they just do one collar, and then they just roll swage the edge of the collar over. It's not as good as having the separate collars that are press fit. And you can even see on this 1/2 inch, it's not as aggressive, but they still do put in additional staking to really make sure that the collar doesn't want to slide off. So really not bad tools at all. And where I think the double universal impact is a little bit weaker, the single pin drive universal, like on this inch drive, that pin, this is definitely proportional. So it seems that just on the doubles, they're just trying to make it a bit smaller or as small a diameter as possible. On the non-impacts, actually, I would say that's the opposite compared to other manufacturers. Like here, we have a Proto. And the reason is it's a hex drive. So now the weakest part is where it's been neck down. And that neck down portion is going to be stronger than the little screws that go through standard universal joints. These are both 1/4 inch drive. Of course, you can get a little bit of extra length. But in this case, you can get, these are compact. But as soon as you get beyond about, it's usually about 45 degrees, you really get this kind of weird cogging action. So, of course, on this style, you only get 30 degrees out of one side, but you do get another 30 here. So that does give you 60 degrees of motion, and it kind of gives you this slight curve, which in certain situations may be exactly what you want, where this doesn't, would fit, but doesn't quite give you enough rise. And then the fact that it is a constant velocity joint. Actually, with the 3/8, it's a little bit easier to see. They do have a nice little touch. You can see that they taper the undercuts for the ball detents. And so the idea with that is that when you put it on a tool, that little taper kind of sucks the socket up, and you can see it doesn't actually wobble back and forth. And that's a nice little attention to detail. And that's essentially one of the things that you're paying for when you're getting a Koken, is really exquisite quality control. Really tight tolerances too. I'm putting it on this is a ball bearing speed handle, but that's the nice thing about these is these are going to be pretty strong for their given drive size. So they're not going to be the maximum strength of a, like say in this case, a 3/8 drive square, just because they have to undercut it in order to get it to get enough swing. But they're certainly going to be better than regular fork style ones. And then having the ability of constant velocity joint, working with the universals, and having one that you can get around, 60 degree bend with. That's quite a quite a reach. It's the word I'm looking for. This makes things a lot easier when they are CV joints. And then as far as diameter, at least that's one nice thing about these. Let me plug that into here. As we can see, the diameters here are just about the same, so you're not getting extra diameter in order to get this double universal joint action. Get this off of here. So anyway, that's my little video about these Koken universal joints. I don't take very many promotional products, but I do appreciate them sending me these. It was a pretty big deal. This is about $335 worth of stuff. At their website prices. They didn't give me any discount codes or anything like that. But overall, they're good, and it's a nice Japanese tool brand. It's been around for a long time, and it was fairly historic family business. Essentially kind of like the Wright tool or the Lyle, like a Wright or Lyle tools, but of Japan. Companies have stayed independent. And they tend to focus really on Socketry products. They don't have wide arrays of specialty tools and every form of plier and all that kind of stuff. They tend to focus on ratchets and sockets and extensions, those associated. They tend to be really focused, and it does show. They have certainly excellent quality control, good fit and finish, and I think they make wise decisions, such as sticking with pin drive on the impact and then using the hex ball on the non-impact. Just because what I've read online, when it really comes down to, when push comes to shove and dirty and tough environments, especially where you're using impact stuff, pin drive is just essentially proven itself. And personally, I totally approve of that, because I believe what I've read online, especially people who've worn out a bunch of different universals, particularly universal sockets, is that under impact loads, these types of sockets, the grit and stuff that gets into them, end up just wearing out, it seems, a bit too quickly. And pin drives, the one nice thing about them is you can have these packed dirt and mud, and due to the nature of the pin drive, it'll just push it out. And so that's really it. I guess they really are pretty nice tools, and I think especially for like the single universals, and these are pretty reasonably priced. They're pretty expendy for the impact double universals, and I like them to be a little bit thicker and a bit heavier duty, but that's really the only real criticism. The rest of these actually seem totally fine and totally legitimate, and actually reasonably priced. Sure, you could say, well, $75, $80 or something for 3/8 and 1/4 inch double universal is a bit of money, but it's actually, for what you're getting here, it's more than reasonable, especially for a much more premium brand. Anyway, I really appreciate everybody who's been watching and subscribing. If you haven't subscribed, please do. Till next time, Catus Maximus out.